Oh. Hi.
Hello, I'm Jamie with the Volusia County Public Library. In this video, you will learn how to sew a reversible bandana for your dog's collar. You will need the following. Fabric of your choice. You can use the same for both sides, or you can use two different fabrics like I'm going to today. Scissors. I have a fabric scissors and a paper scissors, because you're also going to need a large piece of paper or a light cardboard to make our pattern. Thread, a pencil, a ruler or a measuring tape, clips or pins for holding your fabric together. You're also going to want probably an ironing board and an iron to make sure that your fabric is flat, and a sewing machine. Let's get started. First, we're going to measure how long and how wide the collar is that you're going to use for your dog bandana. So I measured mine and it's about a 1/2 inch wide. It's a little bigger, but this is a really thin collar and I wanted the ability to use different ones with it. So I'm going to use a 1/2 inch for my width, and then it's 14 inches long. So on my paper or your cardboard, whatever you're using to make your pattern, I'm going to go ahead and kind of center my 14 inches towards the top. And I'm going to draw a line. And then I'm going to measure my 1/2 inch for my width. A couple of places along the line to help me keep it straight. And then I'll draw a parallel line there. And then I'm going to connect my ends to make a rectangle. So it's kind of an outline of your dog collar. The next thing you're going to do is decide on how long you would like your bandana to be. I'm going to be doing 7 inches. So my length of my collar was 14. So half of that is 7. So you're going to find your middle point. And then I'm going to make mine 7 inches long as well. So I'm going to measure down from my halfway point 7 inches. So you can make a shorter one or you can make a longer one, depends on the size of your dog. So now that I have my 7 inches down midway point, I'm going to connect to both of my corners to make our bandana shape. So I'm going to line up with the bottom corner of my rectangle down to that center point. And the other corner. Okay, so we have the basic form of our bandana. The last thing we need to do is allow for our seams. So we're going to add a 1/2 inch all around for the seam allowance and add an extra 1/2 inch to the short sides of the rectangles. So it's going to be 1 inch here and then a 1/2 inch around the rest. So up from the top, you'll take your ruler and mark along 1/2 inch. From the sides of your triangle, you're going to measure and mark a 1/2 inch, and you'll draw a line like that. And remember, from the ends here, mine's close enough, I'm just going to call that the end of the paper there. And I'm going to add 1 inch over here. So go ahead and measure your 1/2 inches and your inch and connect your lines, and I'll meet you back here. So your pattern should look something like this. What we're going to do next is go ahead and cut this out. So this would be the part where you don't want to use your fabric scissors. So another pair of scissors, go ahead and cut out your pattern. And we're going to use it to then cut out our fabric. So if you're using the same, you could even fold it and cut both at the same time. I have two different ones, so I'm going to put the pattern on the fabric. You can pin it down or clip it down if you'd like, and then you're going to cut out your two pieces of fabric. Before you do that, if your fabric is kind of creased like mine, I'm going to go ahead and iron my fabric and then cut out my pieces. So I will meet you back here after that. We've gone ahead and cut our pattern out of our two fabrics. So my patterned one here clearly has a right side and a wrong side. So I'm going to put my right side, my other fabric doesn't have a right or wrong, but if yours did, you're going to put both right sides together. So that means your colored, patterned, most vibrant side of your fabric in to the other one. So you're left with the wrong side of the fabric facing up. And as you can see, mine didn't totally match up. I didn't make my cutting exact on here, but we're going to be sewing our seam, so I'm not worried about it. So what we're going to do is, with a 1/2 inch seam, we're going to sew across the top of the bandana. So you can pin it or clip it if you'd like. My fabrics are staying together pretty well, so I'm just going to go ahead and sew along the top. So you're going to want to line it up. I'm going to kind of estimate, well, let's see here. 1/2 inch. If I line it up with the edge of my foot here, that's going to give me about a 1/2 inch. Doesn't have to be exact. If the opening's a little larger for the collar, I'm all right with that. So I'm going to go ahead and lower my foot, and I'm going to sew forward a few stitches. And then I'm going to go ahead and back stitch to lock that in. And then I'm going to continue sewing across the top. Now if you see your fabric kind of starting to stray, I do want these ends to line up to make sure they line up, so I'm going to kind of adjust here and kind of hold those. So when I get to the end, I'm going to go ahead and sew to the end and then back stitch again. Just a few stitches, and then forward. And then you can go ahead and remove it from your sewing machine. Thread came out there. And we're going to separate our fabrics, and we're going to press the seam flat with our iron, and then I will meet you back here. So I went ahead and flattened my inseam. As you can see, this is definitely not 1/2 inch, but that's okay. This is a very beginner-friendly and forgiving project. So now we're going to go to each of our small ends here where the collar would enter, and we're going to fold in about a 1/2 inch, and you're going to want to press that with your iron, and then fold in another 1/2 inch. So you're going to end up with it looking like that, and press that with your iron. You're going to do the same thing on the other side here, folding in a 1/2 inch, press, fold in a 1/2 inch again, and press. So go ahead and do that on both of your sides, and I'll meet you back here. I have my 1/2 inch folded, 1/2 inch folded again, and pressed on each side done. We are ready to sew a hem down here to hold this in place. So I'm going to take this to my machine and line that up. Go forward a few stitches and a few back to lock it in. And do a back stitch at the end of that part too. You can go all the way to the end of the fabric, or you can start and stop where the fold is. It's up to you. We're going to be folding and sewing along these diagonals next. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now that we have our ends done, we're going to go ahead and refold it with our right sides facing in. Show you with that. So, like this, you can pin or clip around the outside again if you'd like. Now remember, you're going to leave this open on both sides because that's where your collar is going to go. So we're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance down this diagonal and then up the other side of the diagonal. Don't sew your straight ends here closed, that's where your collar goes. So go ahead and sew the bottom diagonals of your bandana and I'll meet you back here. We've completed sewing our diagonal along the bottom of the bandana, leaving the pockets open at the top. We're also going to use these openings to go ahead and turn our bandana right side out. You might want a pencil or something kind of long and skinny if you're having a hard time turning it right sides out. Once you have your bandana with the right sides out, it will look something like this. You can go ahead and take it to your iron and give it a quick press. And then we are going to sew a line from one end across the top here to the other. You can measure, again, check with your collar to see how big you need to leave the opening, or I just kind of went from corner to corner here when I did mine, figuring if this is a little larger around the collar, I was fine with that. So go ahead and press it, and I'll meet you back here to do our final stitching across the top there. Our bandana is pressed now. I'm going to go ahead and take it to the machine again. I'll go from this end. I'm going to sew across the corner here to corner. That will be wide enough for my collar to fit in. I'm going to use kind of the gauge on the machine here to line up to help me keep a straight stitch. A few forward, lock it in with your back stitch. And just use either the guide here on your machine, or if you're sewing from the other way, you could use maybe the edge here to help you keep it straight as you go across. We're going to do that back stitch one more time to lock it in at the end. And then remove it. And you have your completed dog bandana. I hope you have enjoyed learning how to make this dog bandana. If you're interested in more dog books, you can check out these books and more at your library. And remember, stay crafty, Volusia.